What happened to Inde Navarrette after 13 Reasons Why? If you remember her as Estela de la Cruz from the final season of the Netflix series, you might be surprised by just how much her career has changed since then. Because after 13 Reasons Why ended in 2020, Inde didn't immediately become a major Hollywood star. Instead, she went through years of auditions, setbacks, and uncertainty before landing the role that completely changed the trajectory of her career. And that role wasn't in another Netflix drama. It was in Superman and Lois. Inde Navarrette joined the DC series as Sarah Cushing, the daughter of Lana Lang and Kyle Cushing. The role gave her something she hadn't really had before, a character she could develop over multiple seasons. But her journey to Superman and Lois actually started with 13 Reasons Why. In the fourth and final season of the Netflix series, Inde played Estela de la Cruz, the younger sister of Monty de la Cruz. Estela was introduced after Monty's death, and her presence added another layer to the show's story about the consequences of his actions. The role wasn't enormous, but it put Inde in front of a huge international audience. She was only around 19 when the final season was released. And then, instead of disappearing after the show ended, she moved into a much bigger television opportunity. Superman and Lois premiered in 2021, with Inde becoming part of the main cast as Sarah Cushing. She remained with the series through its first 3 seasons and made appearances during the 4th and final season. Across the show, she appeared in dozens of episodes and became closely associated with the character. But then something unexpected happened. Inde and several other cast members were dropped from series regular status for the final season because of budget cuts. For a young actor trying to build momentum, that could have been devastating. And Inde has since explained that the disappointment actually became an unexpected turning point. Because while it felt like a setback at the time, it eventually opened the door to something much bigger. That opportunity was called Obsession, and this is where Inde Navarrette's story completely changes. Obsession was a horror film directed by Curry Barker. Inde plays Nikki, a young woman caught in a bizarre supernatural situation involving a man who wishes that she would love her. The role demanded something very different from what audiences had seen from Inde before. Instead of playing a teenager in a superhero television drama, she was suddenly carrying a disturbing psychological horror story. And the performance became the breakthrough that changed everything. But there was a surprising twist. Even after filming Obsession, Inde didn't immediately become famous. In fact, she later revealed that she went about a year and a half without booking another acting role. She continued auditioning, she tried to find work, and nothing seemed to stick. During that period, she even walked dogs and streamed online to help pay her bills. So the success you're seeing now didn't happen overnight. Inde had already spent years working toward it. And then Obsession finally arrived. When Obsession was released, everything changed. The film became one of the surprise successes of 2026, and Inde's performance as Nikki became the biggest talking point. Suddenly, people who had never heard of her were searching for the actress who had previously appeared in 13 Reasons Why and Superman and Lois. Her performance was praised for being intense and unsettling without simply turning the character into a typical horror stereotype. Critics and audiences started talking about her as a genuine breakout performer, and the industry noticed. In interviews, Inde explained that she was shocked by the level of attention. She went from struggling to book jobs to having casting directors and major fashion brands contacting her. Her social media following exploded. And suddenly, the question wasn't whether Inde Navarrette would get her next job, it was which job she would choose. That's a very different position from the one she was in just a couple of years earlier. She also began talking more openly about the kind of roles she wanted. She expressed interest in action movies and even named the character Violet Sorengale from the Fourth Wing books as a dream role. She also said she wanted to work with filmmakers including Ryan Coogler and Greta Gerwig. And, importantly, she wasn't simply waiting for Hollywood to decide what she should do next. She was actively thinking about what kind of career she wanted. That's particularly interesting because Inde's career has already crossed several very different genres. 13 Reasons Why gave her a dramatic teenage role. Superman and Lois gave her a long-running superhero character. And Obsession demonstrated that she could carry a much darker and more demanding movie. That versatility may be the biggest reason her career has accelerated so quickly. And now, in August 2026, there's an even bigger development. Inde has been announced as Rogue in Marvel's upcoming X-Men movie. The casting was announced at D23, putting her into one of the most recognizable superhero franchises in the world. That is a massive jump from where she was after 13 Reasons Why. And it makes her career path especially interesting. She went from playing Estela, a supporting character in the final season of a Netflix drama, to Sarah Cushing in Superman and Lois, and then to a leading role in a breakout horror movie. Now she's joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe as one of the X-Men's most famous characters. Rogue is not a minor character. She's one of Marvel's best-known mutants, traditionally portrayed as a powerful character whose abilities are connected to absorbing the powers and memories of others through physical contact. Exactly how Marvel will adapt her for this new X-Men story remains to be seen, but the casting alone represents a huge step in Inde's career. And there's another project that was already in motion before the Obsession explosion. Inde filmed a thriller called Vertigo, in which she has a leading role. The movie comes from the producers behind Fall and puts her in another high-concept thriller environment. So, while audiences may think Obsession suddenly created her career, the reality is more complicated. She had already been building experience for years. Obsession simply gave the industry a reason to pay attention all at once. And now, she's entering a completely different phase.
So what actually happened to Inde Navarrette after 13 Reasons Why? She didn't disappear. She was building. And for several years, that process was much slower than audiences realized. After Estela in 13 Reasons Why, she landed Superman and Lois. She spent multiple seasons playing Sarah Cushing and became part of a major DC television franchise. Then budget changes reduced her role during the show's final season. That could have been the moment her momentum disappeared. Instead, it helped push her toward Obsession. And after Obsession, her entire career accelerated. What's especially interesting is that Inde has been honest about the difficult period in between. She has said that after filming Obsession, she spent about a year and a half without landing another acting job. She auditioned repeatedly, she tried different approaches, and she found other ways to support herself while waiting for the next opportunity. That makes her current success even more remarkable, because from the outside, it can look like she suddenly became famous. But behind that success were years of small roles, auditions, rejection, and uncertainty. And now she has reached the point where she's making choices about what comes next. Her role in Vertigo is another opportunity to move beyond television. Her growing interest in action and fantasy suggests that she doesn't want to be locked into one genre. And then there's Marvel. Being cast as Rogue in the upcoming X-Men movie could become the biggest role of her career. It also creates a fascinating full-circle moment. When audiences first saw Inde in 13 Reasons Why, she was playing a relatively small supporting character. Now she's heading toward one of Marvel's most recognizable mutant characters. That's an enormous career progression in just a few years. And her story is also a reminder that Hollywood breakthroughs don't always happen when you expect them. Superman and Lois was supposed to be a major opportunity. Then budget cuts changed the situation. Obsession was filmed before its eventual success, but Inde still spent a year and a half struggling to find work afterward. Then the movie became a breakout hit. And suddenly, the actress who had been trying to get noticed was one of the most talked about young performers in Hollywood. As of August 2026, the most accurate way to describe Inde Navarrette's career is not that she vanished after 13 Reasons Why. She kept working. She expanded her experience. She survived a difficult stretch when jobs weren't coming. And eventually, she landed the performance that changed how Hollywood saw her. From Estela in 13 Reasons Why, to Sarah Cushing in Superman and Lois, to Nikki in Obsession, and now to Rogue in Marvel's X-Men, Inde Navarrette's career has taken a dramatic turn. The actress who once had to fight simply to get another audition is now entering the biggest franchise opportunity of her career. And if Rogue becomes the kind of breakout role that Marvel is clearly hoping for, the question may soon stop being what happened to Inde Navarrette after 13 Reasons Why. Instead, it may become what happens to Inde Navarrette